How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. Great. Well, let's get started. Let me just
Okay.
get a couple things going here. Okay. So, thanks so much for joining. I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So, introduce yourself, please.
So I'm Berkeley. I am with Doyenne Detroit. We're a local property management company here on the outskirts of Detroit, in the suburbs. So we work in Detroit as well as the suburbs around Detroit with management, Airbnb management, rehabs, just really anything and everything involved with property construction and renting.
Fantastic. And how long have you been in? How long have you? When did you start Doyenne Detroit?
So Doyenne Detroit started last year. My partner and I, we were both working in the field for a long time. I've been a property manager for over a decade. And right before we had started Doyenne Detroit, I was helping other investors set up their own management companies, staff and operate, growth, things like that. So we just got to the point where we should just be doing this ourselves for ourselves instead of for other people. So that's when Doyenne Detroit was born.
And so at the beginning, were you just managing your own properties, sort of running things through Doyenne Detroit that was yours personally, or did you start managing other people's properties?
No, we started with other people's properties first. We didn't start buying our own until a couple months after we started managing for other people. As soon as we started advertising, we started getting a couple of investors under our belt. So we were able to start with some outside parties. And then a company that I had worked with in the past ended up dissolving. They went under. And so I took over for all of the investors that they had. So it sort of ended up being a rapid growth. That was about 50 properties that we absorbed at one time. So that scaled us up pretty far. And then a lot of those guys just kept buying. So we've been adding on ever since.
Yeah, well, from my own experience, because I had a property management company for a decade, if you can find a good property manager, you stick with them, right? Because there's just
Yes.
some terrible ones out there that I'm sure once people realize that you guys knew what you were doing, then you probably get a lot of referral business, I'm guessing.
We do, yeah. I mean, knock on wood, it's been going really well so far with our referrals. We are very overseas investor based. We're very strong with our communications, which seems to be the most important part for all of our overseas guys.
Huge, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they're not here. They don't have boots on the ground. They can't see anything. Half of them have never been to Detroit, so they don't know what it's like driving through the blocks and realizing that it's very block to block sometimes with what may or may not be a good investment. So we do very much handhold in that regard. So yeah, luckily we've had a lot of referrals from those guys.
So do you have investors coming to you and saying, like, I want to acquire a property. Can you help me? Can you help me identify it? And, and then help me buy it and then help me manage it? Do you do all of that?
Yes, exactly. So we're start to finish for all things investors and what they could potentially need within this market. So I'm a real estate broker and I have agents under me as well. So we'll help source properties. We'll go out, we'll run the rehab costs. We'll give them an ROI sheet and a return on investment analysis for them so they can, make the right assumption if it's going to be the right fit for them or not. If they do decide to pull the trigger on the property, then we'll go ahead and close it for them as well. Then we'll do the rehab. From there, we'll do the lease up, we'll manage it for them, and we'll maintain that throughout the duration of their holding up until they're ready to sell. We'll also help with maybe different maneuvers they want to do. Maybe they're going to do the BRRRR strategy. Maybe they just want to get rid of everything and buy a multifamily. Whatever it may be, we'll help with that process as well.
And for people that don't know what the BRRRR strategy is, which is buy, rehab, refinance,
rent, refinance, repeat.
repeat. Okay. So just the idea that, yeah, you can use your cash, then leverage, pull your money out, and then go buy another property. Just
Right,
keep,
exactly.
keep rolling it
Exactly.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important for us to know what their strategy is going into it because that might change the way that we do their rehab. Especially if they want to get the appraisal and get the highest appraised value so that they can cash out as much as they can. It's just going to change the way we do things within the property. So it's important for us to know going into it. And then we also have lenders available as well, just people that we've worked with in the past that we like, or that have been fairly easy to work with. So we'll make referrals for those guys as well.
So when you started, and I know you said you have a partner named Vicky. So was it the two of
Yeah.
you that started the company?
Yeah. Her and I started. We had worked together in the past through another investor that had started his own company. That's how we met. We worked really well together. And so we were just both hitting that wall and ready to do it ourselves. So it ended up being perfect timing for both her and I.
That's super important for in a partnership, I know, because I've had really good partnerships and I've had disaster partnerships. And sometimes you kind of don't know until you get into
Yeah.
it which one it's going to be. How do you, what are the skill sets that you both bring and how do you divide up who does what? Like, did that sort of come naturally or did you decide at the beginning?
Yeah, it sort of comes naturally with her and I. We work together so well, I think, because we're sort of the yin and the yang. She does stuff that I can't do or don't like to do, and then I do stuff that she can't do or doesn't like to do. So she's the field person. She's our construction lady. She knows how to talk to the contractors, do the scopes, do the budgets, make sure it gets done successfully, the change orders, the communications, anything that comes in and around a lot of that field work. I'm more of the behind the scenes person. I'm doing the computer stuff, the reconciliations, the owner statements,
Calling
all of that.
tenants?
Yes. Managing the staff and the operations with the management company itself. So we both complement each other very well in that way.
And what does your staff makeup look like? How many people do you have and how did that scale up since you started?
Yeah, we have a staff of 8, which
Okay.
people laugh at me sometimes because we are, sort of new in the scene. We've only been around for a year and we're staffed fairly heavily for where we're at right now. But I did that on purpose. So we do have a staff of 8 that's not including Vicky and I. So it's 10 of us all together in the team. Um, but a lot of our guys are part-time and we're doing that so that I can have everybody situated in each department that we need so that when we do start growing more and more, we can just add on without having to restructure what everybody's doing behind the scenes. So I have one lady that's handling all of my maintenance. She does maintenance and collections. I have another lady that does all of my advertising for both the company as well as all of our vacancies. So we advertise everything through Facebook. So she'll do all of that for us. I have an accounting lady. Well, 2 accounting ladies. I have one that does sort of the mild accounting and another one that does more of the heavy lifting accounting. And then I have 2 maintenance techs as well. So those are my in-house guys that I have really just on the payroll, ones that can go and be wherever I need them to go then and
Mhm.
there, instead of waiting for a subcontractor to make time. So,
Mhm. I always found that was really challenging. I tried to have in-house maintenance people, but the billing was really challenging.
yeah.
How you resolved all of that?
I love that you brought that up because we actually just changed the way that we were doing our billing with our in-house guys last week. So they were on an hourly payroll. I had them clock in, clock out, very much timesheet style. And then I recently switched them to doing all invoices and just invoicing out per job. I
Mhm.
was saving a little bit of money doing the hourly, but I was using that additional time just doing the accounting in and around their timesheets. So I switched it where they do all of their own billing now, and I just take it and pay and approve essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think it became complicated because they just weren't telling me what they were doing at what jobs, and it just fell apart. So good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Well, we took heavy control of that. I had it when I first started, I was having my guys just schedule their own work orders, and I was having too many issues. They were complaining about not getting 40 hours a week. Tenants wouldn't call them back, or they wouldn't be there for the showing. Maybe we didn't have a coded lock, so we couldn't just make access ourselves. Whatever it was, they weren't getting their hours. And so we took control and we schedule out for them. So we call the tenants, we put them on a schedule. They have to check their schedule the night before just to get their bearings. And then in order for them to get paid, they have to have full detail on their invoice of what happened with both before and after photos.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good system.
Yeah, but I thank my guys because it is not easy to find guys that are willing to fall into that process for you and do it successfully. These two guys are guys that I've worked with for a really long time, and I've just sort of taken them with me wherever I go. And so it's been so great just having two guys that you trust and have worked with and that are willing to do this process for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So who are your clients? Are they mostly out of country investors, or
Yeah.
do you have anybody local, or is it mostly people that don't live around here?
I have a couple local guys, but the lion's share of what we have are overseas investors: Brazil, Israel, Argentina, Australia, several more that I can't think of right now, but so many places with all of our investors. And I really only have a handful of local guys that I manage for.
Yeah, there seems to be like a real need from the foreign investors to have somebody they can really trust and rely on. So yeah. So what is your background? Like how did you get into real estate and then into property management? What is your origin story?
So I'm from Livonia originally here in Michigan, and I went to school for interior design. And I had to take those prereq classes in order to take, the real ones that you want to take. And I walked into one of my prereq math classes, and my math teacher was watching a Math for Dummies video, and I was early that day. And then he taught us what he saw in the video before the class. And I was like, after that, I went to my counselor. I'm like, I need to change. Like, I'm getting out of the school, transfer me. So I transferred to the same school in Chicago. And after I got to Chicago and I was doing interior design or going through the schooling for interior design, I wanted to be like one of those HGTV people, learn the design and the real estate and sort of do the whole thing with house flipping. And so I got into real estate. I started working for a lady, a broker that owned a small company in Detroit, just as her assistant. And I started growing from there. I became her office manager, and then she got me licensed. So I was licensed there. And then I slowly got to my broker license over there and just started working in property management. She was buying properties as holdings and renting them out. So I helped her with management. And then I ultimately switched over to another property management company there in Chicago. And then I wanted to move back home and become a part of the Detroit resurgence. That was in 2012. And so it was sort of after the crash and things were slowly starting to piece together. So I wanted to become a part of that. So we moved back home. I got relicensed here in Michigan. Luckily, they let me go straight to broker without having to do the salesperson stuff first. So then I just kept working in property management and kept going. So it's been a long compilation of different
Mhm.
places and doing different things. So, but it was nice learning in Chicago, starting with the mid rises and the high rises. I worked around Wrigley Field in Wrigleyville. So it was a fun time being in my young 20s, just flying around the city, showing apartments and selling some of the duplexes and stuff out there.
That sounds really fun. Um, so um, tell me about the name Doyenne. It's
So
French,
Vicky came
right?
up. Yeah, so it actually stands for the most prominent female in your field. Vicky came up with the name, and I thought it was amazing. We're both very strong personality type females, and so we felt it to be very fitting with where we were at.
So you said it means the most prominent person in your field?
The most prominent female in your
Okay,
field.
got it. Okay.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. I didn't know that, but
yeah.
that's really fitting. So very cool. Um, so so I want to talk about Airbnb next. So how was that always a component of your business, Airbnb management, or did people just
Mm-mm.
keep asking you for it? And
No, it actually started with Vicky, my partner. She wanted to dive into Airbnbs. I was actually completely against it. The area that she pitched to me, the house that she pitched to me, I did not think it was going to work. It was a property in Westland, a niche area that they call quote unquote Shack Town. And I did not think it would work in Shack Town. But it did. We went through with COVID. We were taking advantage of the EIDL, the PPP, or the just whatever SBA loans were out there, and so we were able to secure financing to get our first Airbnb. And after we listed it, I was still a little bit apprehensive that it was
so
going to be
this is a property that you two own.
yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
did you own it previously as a rental, or you acquired it specifically to be an Airbnb?
Yeah, we acquired it specifically for the idea of Airbnb.
Okay.
Yeah, we figured if it didn't work out as Airbnb, we could just turn it into a long-term rental and it
Mhm.
wouldn't be too bad. So um, we listed it and it started renting. And right now we are booked solid for that property until the end of May. And it's been one of our best performers so far.
And why do you think that? When I think Airbnb, I think, vacation rental, or I think, people wanting to stay in Detroit because you can walk around like Westland, like what is the appeal? Or is there a
Yeah.
hospital near there or
No, so it's no nurses. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of locals. It's mainly people that are coming in from out of town. A lot of guys visiting their family. It's not even a whole lot of professionals checking, an investor coming to look at his portfolio. It's none of that. It's all just families visiting friends or visiting a sick family member, or they're just in town for a couple weeks and need a place to stay. So just a lot of out of towners.
do you think that that air I've heard that Airbnbs have become more popular because of COVID because people don't want to stay in hotels as much. They want a private space. Have you found that to be true?
Well, being as that we didn't have any Airbnbs pre-COVID, it's hard for me to really make that comparison.
Mhm.
But I will say that the Airbnbs we started sort of off the beaten path have been very successful. And a lot of times people are saying that they would rather stay in a house that has separate bedrooms and a full kitchen as opposed to paying an extra $10 a night or whatever it might be to stay in a hotel where the
Mhm.
entire family is in one room, very
Right.
minimal kitchen.
And
So,
then having, yeah, exactly, no kitchen, having to order
right.
everything. Um, so would you share some of your numbers with me? What do you charge per night for
So it
that one?
depends on the area, but we average anywhere between $75 and $100 a night,
Okay.
depending on where the area is. Airbnb does charge their specific fees. They've got like a 3% host fee that they charge us. But we're averaging anywhere between 80 to 90% occupancy every month through Airbnb. So our gross on that is higher than what a long-term rental would have been bringing in. Our ROI averages just a little bit above what a long-term rental would be, but that's because we have to pay for all of our utilities now. So we're doing the internet, we have to pay for the gas, the electric. I think that's really just the three outside of the cleaning that we have to do. So we're averaging a little bit higher on our ROI than what it would have been as a long-term rental.
And then do you do you charge the cleaning fee back to the people that are staying, the guests?
We do. Yeah. So we charge the guest cleaning fee up front. It's built within the listing. So when they book, they know exactly what that fee is going to be, and it's taken out from their card as soon as they book. We charge straight cleaning fees, so we're not really making anything on top of that. And that's for a reason. We pay, I think, a little bit more to our cleaner because the cleaner is so important. If the cleaner doesn't do a good job or she's not a reliable person, then it can really just destroy your Airbnb, especially if you're trying to maintain a super host status, which is what Vicki and I have right now through Doyenne Detroit with Airbnb, is the super host. So they recheck that super host status every 3 months. So we always have to be maintaining the good reviews, multiple stays, no cancellations, a high response rate, communications back and forth just to maintain that. And so if you have a cleaner that misses some things, then you're going to get a bad review. And it's super easy to miss things on an Airbnb cleaning.
Yeah. So did you find her, the cleaning person, and train her for Airbnb, or did she already have experience cleaning for Airbnbs and knew what the expectation would be?
So I got really lucky because I have a sector of my family that had worked for Made Pro in the past. Made Pro has like a 30-point cleaning list that they have to get through each house. And so they had no longer been working with Made Pro and they were interested in coming and cleaning for me. So I hired them, knock on wood. It's been really great. I did look for outside cleaners as a plan B, a backup for when they can't, maybe we're swamped with too many. And so we have backups, but I use them as my main cleaners. So I just got lucky in that way, having family that had worked for Made Pro in the past.
Okay. So they kind of like help you. Did they say, we're going to adapt this 30-point cleaning plan? Or did you kind of, because I would guess that they do other things for you too. Like they have to check the supplies and let you know if you're running low on toilet paper, or, something needs a deeper cleaning, a new shower curtain, it's getting moldy and weird. They kind of are your eyes. They're the last, unless you're able to pop in after they clean and check everything. I imagine you rely on your cleaners for a lot more than just strictly cleaning.
Yeah, they do. We did walk the first couple of properties with them on their first cleanings just to go over exactly what we're looking for. I sort of took up what Made Pro did and I made my own checklist with not only things that we needed to clean, but the things that we needed to restock, where to get those things and where to put them within the home. Because some things need to go in the bathroom, extras need to go in the closet. One thing we have learned, though, with supplies is not to oversupply the house. Ultimately, they end up gone after the next guest if you oversupply. So unless you get a safe or something that you put your extra toilet paper in or whatever it is, we just leave little bits and then they keep the rest in their car.
So yeah, obviously toilet paper has become a commodity during COVID. So people are picking them under their coats on their way out.
Yep.
Yeah, I never would have thought about that, but that's really good to know. We have a question from Denitra. She wants to know, have you had to do anything well, so you started Doyenne Detroit basically in COVID, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine that you also had to have specific cleaning standards and practices related to that. And I think Airbnb even has a list of what they want to see. But can you speak a little bit about that? Just to, were there any things that you have to do or say to make your guests feel more comfortable?
Yeah, so not so much to do or say on the guest end, but we did have to appease Airbnb's new regulations that they rolled out when Corona hit. So they came out with a list of things that we had to oblige by on all of the cleanings, and we had to sign an agreement with them so that they didn't remove all of our listings from the platform. So we do adhere to their cleaning practices. What they want is things that other Airbnb hosts may not do. Like if a guest doesn't use one of the bedrooms, they might not wash the sheets for that bedroom. The Airbnb guidelines require us to launder all of the sheets, blankets, pillows, comforters after each guest, whether or not they were used. Same thing with the dishes. If there's dishes left over in the cupboard, they require us to spray down all of the dishes, disinfect every cabinet or countertop handle within the property. So little tweaks like that we've had to go in and do for the regulations.
Yeah, that sounds pretty significant, having to like wash every single dish no matter what. But I guess
Yeah.
just, probably makes people feel a little bit more secure that the place is really clean. So
Yeah. That's why we don't upcharge on our cleaning, because we had to end up paying more out to those cleaners, and it was becoming too much of a charge back to the guest, because the guest also has to pay Airbnb guest fees on top of the host fees that they charge us on our side. So we had to try and mitigate that for the guest as much as we could.
Mm-hmm. And so did that make you, as things were starting, you were starting to see that this is a successful venture, Vicky was right?
Yeah.
Did it make you want to go get more, or did you start to figure out how that you could multiply that for other, create that for other people that owned Airbnbs?
Yeah, so we did both actually simultaneously. So after Westland was so successful, we went out and got four more. So we got four more right away, which I would not recommend. I would recommend doing one at a time, because a couple of them sat while we had to figure out the furnishings and arrange all of that.
Oh, and
And
so
then,
you got to have your HGTV moment, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah. And so from there, we started advertising, the Airbnb management as well, because we had learned a lot of lessons on our Westland house that we started. So after we got the groove with that, we started advertising. And so a couple of our investors that were already looking to purchase long-term rentals, they were interested in the idea of short-term. So they kicked the can around a little bit on that and then decided to move forward. So now we have a couple of our seasoned investors that are now dabbling in the Airbnb market and are doing it pretty successfully.
So so you helped them acquire the property, of course, or maybe they already had one, but they wanted to convert it to a short-term rental. So then they pay you to basically buy all the furnishings and furniture and housewares and everything.
Yeah.
Do you, I think people don't realize how expensive it is to buy all of that stuff,
Yes.
because I outfitted an Airbnb once. I wanted to try it to just see for a management client, have that experience. And yeah, way more than 5,000. Like probably even buying stuff from IKEA and the Salvation Army, you're probably closer to like 10,000. So I don't think people, do you have a budget for them where you say, okay, this is a 1-bedroom, you can expect to pay this at
We
minimum?
do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So the 2 bedrooms, we tell them is going to be anywhere between 5 and 7,500.
Mm-hmm.
On the 3 bedrooms, it'll be anywhere between 75 and 10 for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what people forget is the organization of trying to get the cheaper furniture. So when you're trying to outfit the Airbnb, you're looking for used stuff on Facebook, or you go to IKEA, like you said, and get the cheaper stuff. And then you forget that you have to put all of that IKEA stuff together. And you've got 3 beds, a dining room table, 2 coffee tables, a TV stand, and just all of the
and one Allen wrench.
Yes, exactly. You forget your tool bag like in the other Airbnb that you just left. So yeah, and you forget about all of that stuff. So then you end up spending 8 hours putting all that furniture together. And yeah, that's the little stuff that tends to add up that you don't think about.
Definitely. Yep. And then all of like the spatula and the plunger and the hair dryer and the things that you don't even think about. Yeah.
Yeah. We had Vicki and I, we have an Airbnb in Southfield, and we had a guest check in, and they complained that there was no kitchen utensils. We're like, well, we know we fully stocked this kitchen, and the previous guest had no complaints. So we're thinking, well, either the previous guest stole all the kitchen utensils and the cleaner maybe didn't notice. So Vicki goes over there, and she walks in and she opens the kitchen drawer, and all the kitchen utensils are right there. And the guest wasn't aware that that kitchen drawer opened. And so, yeah, so you'll get little things like that too through your Airbnb experience.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other fun stories about guests that you want to share?
Yeah, we get a lot of, crazy things. And it's not so much a specific story, but we do have Ring cameras on the exterior of all of our properties, just so we can gauge when the check-ins are happening, check out, make sure everything's going to plan with the guests and parties. Well, our Airbnb in Southfield is turning into more of a, like the one-nighter stays, the partier stays. And so we get some funny Ring camera footage in front of that house. So just people partying, intoxicated guests trying to put in the code that they don't really know. They're looking and trying to enter it, and they're swaying back and forth. And so just funny little things like that. Knock on wood, we haven't had anything too extreme. We have had a couple of nitpicky guests where, during our winter season, we had some heavy snows. And so as that snow started melting, there would be some trash here and there that maybe came out of the garbage can or whatever that was embedded in the grass from the season. So as the season changed, we would get a couple of guests that would complain, but maybe just little trash pieces here and there. And they would want a full refund for that. Or maybe there's a coffee ring on the windowsill that the cleaner missed. And they want a full refund for the coffee ring stain on the windowsill. So just stories like that have taught me a lot about the cleaning.
Right. Like, yeah. And how high maintenance people can be. I mean, I get it. You want to have a good experience, but a full refund.
Yeah. But that's definitely the difference between the long-term and the short-term. Is a long-term rental, if somebody has a maintenance request, that's to be expected, but if you have a short-term rental and a maintenance item comes in, it's a refund and an upset guest. So if you have to snake a drain while you have an Airbnb guest, you may as well just expect to refund the guest so that you save yourself a bad review. So that's the big difference there in the management style behind long-term and short-term.
Right. Just a lot more attentive. And, I think people kind of expect perfection.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, they're paying top dollar to have a place to stay in. So I get it. It just changes the way that you have to react within your management world.
Do you have different people in your company that specifically handle the Airbnb management, or does that just the property manager automatically deals with that? And do you are your operations any different related to Airbnb?
Yes and no. So Vicki, my partner, she is the one that really spearheads all of our Airbnb stuff. We felt it at first, we had multiple people handling our Airbnb. It was both her and I as a simultaneous effort. And we found that there was some overlap happening. So we just left it all to her for her to manage. So now she oversees everything. And then we have our cleaner take care of the supplying and all of the other little stuff that comes in between. Our cleaner will also go around to all of our properties and take out the trash. That's a big thing that a lot of people forget when they do the Airbnbs is trash day.
They put the can out, but then there's nobody to pull it back in. So it just sits
Well,
there.
that, and you can't necessarily control when your guests are checking in and checking out. So if you have a guest that checks out on a Monday and your trash day is Thursday, they're bringing the trash out to the side of the house and it just sits there. So if we don't get there that Thursday to take the trash out, regardless of check in, check out, then you have an angry guest that checks in with a couple piles of trash on the side of your house. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so much. It's just, I think it just requires a lot more manpower for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
So I've heard some investors say that for Airbnb, like you shouldn't have a management company. You should do everything yourself. Now, obviously, if you're not local, it's kind of impossible. But what is your response to that?
I understand where they're coming from, depending on who the management company is that you're dealing with. Because like we had mentioned in the beginning of the live, is that it's so hard to find a good property management company. So if they're already sort of lax in doing their long term, they're not going to be able to react for you with the quickness that you need on the short term. So I do understand where that comment would come from. For me personally, though, with our company, I feel like we would be a better service than if you were trying to do it on your own, only because we have the staff already that's used to doing it. They're used to jumping immediately with no hesitation. They're already trained in what these guests are going to be looking for, and we've already learned the hard way. So we've already messed up enough for the other investors to sort of learn from our mistakes. And so in that regard, I feel like it's best served with a good property management company that has done it before. If it's a bad management company, though, then maybe you are better off just trying to do it yourself.
Yeah. So how do you, so I'm guessing, so let's talk about your fee structure. And you don't necessarily have to quote like specific percentages, but so for your regular property management, and I just want to comment, like Jen, I see your question and we will get to it. I appreciate you asking that. So do you just charge a flat percentage? Do you charge a percentage and then additional fees for different services? So if you can talk about your fee structure for property management and then how that differs for Airbnb management.
Yeah. So for long-term rentals, we charge a flat fee. We got away from the standard percentage with additional charges for additional services. We, as investors ourselves, don't like looking at owner statements and seeing charges for things that you weren't necessarily expecting outside of maintenance work orders. So we don't like to push that off to our investors as well. So we just charge a flat fee and include all of the running arounds that might include, waiting for a DTE, waiting for consumers, having to run up to the city to check on whatever it is, filing your as-is rider if they're going to be selling a house, just whatever it might be, we'll do for them and include in our flat fee. The Airbnb charges, though, we are on the structured percentage. We do charge 20% for that. I know with long terms, it's usually about a 10%, what most people charge on their management fees for Detroit, maybe a little bit less for the suburbs. But for Airbnb management, it is a little bit higher just because of the reaction rate you have to have behind everything. You might have 3 or 4 check-ins that week. Maybe you have 7 check-ins because everybody stayed just the one night. And so you have to arrange your cleaner for all of those across the board. So it's a 20% management on those guys.
Yeah. And I would think that, yeah, I mean, and I think anybody would appreciate paying for, basically somebody who is going to care about the property, as they would their own. So, I mean, you have to be by your phone responding to inquiries when people check in, you just have to be basically on standby the entire time the guest is in the property.
Right, exactly. And for our Airbnbs, we have those Bluetooth coded locks on
Mhm.
everything. So you have to send a new code with each check-in, just for safety.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, you really have to be present during their check-in. And some of these guys get off their flights late. So they're not checking in until midnight, and you have to make sure you're refreshing and sending them that code right before their check-in. So there is
Mhm.
a lot of just sort of being on call, I would say, for the Airbnb world.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so we had a question. Jen asked, she wanted to talk about, so right now, as you I'm sure are feeling, we're in a giant housing shortage. I
Yeah.
believe nationwide we have 25% fewer homes on the market than the beginning of 2020. So the anecdotes are out there. People are like going to blows and knife fights to buy houses. Investors are having trouble finding houses because, there's just a shortage everywhere. So, I've heard in places like New York, it in the past, previous years, it's really exacerbated the available housing in, certain areas. Any thoughts about that as far as like this influx of Airbnbs, or do you think actually contribute to a housing shortage in Michigan based on like what you know and what you see?
I'm sure it's possible that it might play some sort of marginal role within a housing shortage. I don't feel like, though, it would make up a large enough role to create everything that we're seeing happening today. I feel like there definitely has to be other factors coming in to create the type of shortage that we have right now in and outside of just Airbnbs operating.
Mhm.
But I'm sure, yeah, it has some sort of role in it because, Vicky and I went out and just got 5 properties and put them as Airbnbs that would have potentially be resold as retail. Yet at the same time, maybe we would have held onto them as a long-term rental, which would also contribute to a
Mhm.
housing shortage as far as buys are concerned. So it's really hard to say, to be honest, because if we're going to say it's Airbnbs, it might just be all rentals as a whole,
Yeah.
and that prevalence helping to create some of the shortage.
Yeah, and at the same time, I feel like uh, as the further we got out of the recession, because there were so many properties that turned into rentals, because people they needed to move, but they couldn't sell their house because it wasn't worth enough, so they rented it out. And as market values recovered after the recession, a lot of those rentals turned into owner occupied. So, I mean, part of it is definitely, I just feel like cyclical,
Yeah.
and not. And then, you know, I it's also just what's changing culturally because of COVID. People don't want to stay in hotels. Their preference is to stay in Airbnbs. And so now you have these commercial buildings that nobody's working in. And then
Mm,
you also have hotels that nobody is staying in. And maybe that will change. But, maybe there will be a whole shift while those buildings start to turn into apartments and, other things like that. Um,
right.
so I just think it's interesting to think about, the change of use for all of us, just because people are living differently. More people want to live in single family homes, bigger single family homes,
Hmm.
homes with more bedrooms because they don't want to work in the closet or at the dining room table and all of those things. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting to think about all of that, how much it's changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're a traveling family, if you have 4 kids, a husband and wife, it's hard to shack up in just one hotel room. Then you have to get two that has the joining door. So once you're paying double hotel rooms, it just makes sense to stick that
Mhm.
family in an Airbnb. So
Yeah.
just shift.
Definitely. How has, based on your experience with property management previously, maybe not for your own company, but in your previous experience, because I haven't been in property management for a few years, so I don't know, but how has COVID changed for you? I understand it's harder to evict tenants now when they don't pay. So, what else has changed for you and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, so first and foremost is definitely the collection process as far as the tenants are concerned. Not even so much the eviction moratorium. That it has obvious effects, but it's really changed everything that just goes backwards from there to the start of how we do our collections. Before, it was so much easier within our routine of sending a 7-day and enforcing that 7-day and then enforcing what happens in court. Now, there's no real routine when it comes to the court process with the timeline. So before, it's always like clockwork. After 2 weeks, you get your court date. But now you're waiting 2 months to get a court date. It might be longer, might be shorter. So it's really hard to gauge how to help your tenant within that process now. Before, we used to do payment plans and try and help them through the court process because our goal is to have them paid in full no matter how long it takes, because we want to stabilize the ROI. We just want to make sure that number doesn't change at the end of the year. Where now it's so hard to gauge how to help the tenant outside of getting the landlord tenant case filing number, filing on them with the SERA program, which is the COVID emergency rental assistance program that they have rolled out right now. So that's been a big change. Just how can we be better successful at our collections even before we get to court? So that's changed. Our application process has also changed a lot as well. We were always erring on the side of being more rigorous with our applications. We look into things very detailed. Now, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of tenants have unemployment and they're surviving on unemployment. So it's what do we do as a management company when you're bringing in verifiable income and it suffices to rent the property, but it's an unsecured position. It's something like unemployment, which is very temporary and is so up in the air sometimes. Sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't. And it's hard to maneuver around that. So unfortunately, we've had to pivot where we deny a lot more than we approve because of Corona and unemployment and the history behind that employment. So it's unfortunate for the tenant, or the prospect tenant, given everything that's going on. But, it leaves us very little choice, unfortunately, when we're working, for the owners and trying to find the most stable person that can be there for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, maybe more. So our application process has changed a lot just as far as who we can approve on the back end.
Okay. And how has the COVID relief program went for you? Is it, have you been successful with it? Is it laborious to file? I've heard people with success stories. I've heard people with nightmare stories. What has been your experience?
So right now we are still in process. So I have neither negative or positive to say as of this point. We filed on all of those takeover properties that we had gotten all at once. So we're going through this process with everybody at the same time, it seems like. So I don't really have any of my tenants ahead of others as far as our filing dates are concerned. Right now, though, we had all of our court dates. All of those court dates were adjourned. We got the application links to file for the program, and they've all been filed on. We got emails back from the state verifying that they did receive our applications. So now we're just waiting to see what the next step is.
And ideally, those funds would go on the tenant's behalf to basically pay the back rent to the landlord.
Exactly. So my understanding is they are paying all of the back rent for the tenant as well as rentals in advance.
Okay.
My understanding is they will pay up to 4 months in advance, but I really don't know the details around that because we haven't successfully seen that start to finish yet. So I don't know what their parameters are for how much they're going to pay in advance. I just don't know what stipulations they're looking for in and around that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I imagine that, you probably have quite a few clients who are just kind of waiting it out right now.
Yeah, it's such a bummer for the clients because they already had to wait 2 months to get their initial court date. And then the judge is adjourning all of the court dates just to see it through until the SERA funding hits.
Mhm.
So, and of course, every adjournment, there's attorney's fees and things like that. So it's just really a terrible position for an owner to be in right now with a non-paying tenant during Corona. We have really, because of everything, we have upped our squatter process because we have seen an increase of squatters in our vacant units as a
Okay.
result of Corona. We've always had squatters. We operate in mainly C and D class areas. So we've always had that issue, but it seems like since Corona, it's just been way more prevalent than it ever has. So we've staffed up what I call a squatter kicker outer, our reclaim expert. And so he'll help out some of our investors just getting their squatters out too, was the other half of what we deal with on the removals for the
Mhm.
non-paying guys.
Yeah, I would have never thought that, but I guess that makes sense if you have vacant property and people are looking for housing. Yeah,
Yeah.
this becomes a challenge, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like there's two calibers of squatter. There's, some that just need the warm place to stay, and then there's some that do a full on hostile move in and just do not want to go. So it's definitely not cookie cutter when it comes to squatters and how to, you know, resolve that successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if somebody was to come to you now and is interested in your services, um, let's say they don't have a property now, they'd like to buy a property through you or identify one through you, or at least get your advice on, you know, what kind of process do you go through to discuss that? How do you initiate clients into property management or Airbnb management? Like, walk me through if I'm a client. Like, what kind of things, what kind of process do we go through?
So what I typically do is I have an initial discussion about what they're looking for. Sometimes it's phone call, sometimes it's Zoom. It really just depends on the client and what they prefer to do. I go over our services. I have our brochure and a lot of mailers, ready to just be sent out so they can have something tangible to look back on if they need to reiterate, from our discussion. Um, what we do is if they're a fresh investor, they don't have any properties they're looking to buy, I set them up on our email blast. Some of our agents in-house, what they're doing is they're compiling all of the deals that are coming through, either in our email, on Facebook, on the MLS, some of the wholesalers that we have that come to us directly. They compile all of those deals and they do what we call scrubbing. So they'll go through and they'll weed out what's a good fit for our investors or what's not a good fit for our investors or anybody for that matter. And they'll weed out some of those other ones. And then they'll send out all of the ones that we have that we feel are good investments to everybody that's on our, what I call our VIP list. I'm sure a lot of people have their VIP lists. And we include all of our new, fresh investors on that list as well. So if they see a property that they're interested in, then they would reach out back to us and then we would take it from there. We'll check out the property, we'll run the rehab figures, we'll give them an ROI estimate on that property. And if the numbers fit what they're looking for, then we'll go ahead and close it for them. And then we'll give them, we'll start the rehab. They already have the budgets from us and everything during the acquisition process. So then we start the rehab for them and take it from there until they see the next house that comes through on the email blast.
And as far as property management goes, or Airbnb management, is just a simple contract? Is there anything specific that you need to collect or to, like, do you have, what is your process for that?
Yeah, so for long-term rentals, we do have they have to pay a reserve. It's just a small $500 reserve to hang onto their property, really just for maintenance that comes in so we can use that before we reach into rents. So that is something that we do require. We have a fully tailored owner portal that we give to all of our investors, and we created this ourselves. It's not the AppFolio, Buildium, Yardi type owner portals where you just pre-approve reports to be seen. This portal pulls a lot of information from our software and it customizes the view. So on here, they can see anything that they need regarding their property. So they'll have all of their documents on there. All of their LLC information, their EIN, what properties they have, who their tenants are, if they have a vacant, what the status of that vacant is, if we have an application, if we have a security deposit, really just anything and everything that they would possibly have a question on before they have to ask us. So we do roll this out for everybody, and it's been really helpful just sort of toning down a lot of the questions that come in day to day through 40 different investors. So within that portal is an onboarding form that we send to everybody. That's both for short term and long term. That onboarding form just makes them upload all of their documents, give us all of their information. It gives them a link to pay their reserve. The Airbnb side, we don't require too much upfront. We do take a reserve as well because maintenance still happens. The contract is slightly different, but we're asking for all the same documents, the LLC, the EIN, all the stuff that we need to start utilities in their name, essentially. So that's really it. It's just a basic form they fill out that they upload their docs and pay their reserve. We have no setup fees. So we make the onboarding really most feasible for them as possible so they don't have to come in out of pocket. And I did that because I notice a lot of people come to us because they had problems with their previous property manager and they're out money. They don't know what to do. And so I just got rid of the setup fees and said, just come on board and we'll just get you started and start fixing your portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like property management triage sometimes. You're like, okay, the ship is
Yeah,
sinking. Like, we got to get in there fast. Like, contact
exactly.
the tenant. Like, let them know what's going. Sometimes the tenants, there's stuff that you can work out with them, but the previous property manager just was not, doing any adequate communication. And sometimes you just resolve all the issues right away just by knowing what you're doing.
Exactly, exactly. And it seems like some of the stuff is the simplest things to resolve to keep a happy, well-paying tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as doorknobs and operational locks,
Yeah,
So, but of course,
definitely.
there's the other side of that story too, where the entire house is full of mold and who knows what. So we get all spectrums.
Well, we are coming right up on 9 o'clock. So I wanted to know, if somebody did want to find out more about your services, what is the best way to get a hold of you? And yeah.
Yeah, so they can find us on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, Doyenne Detroit, and you can send us a message through there. Our lady is always responding to Facebook messages, so she'll get it right away. Or you can always call our office number, which is 734-578-1453. And they'll get a hold of me. We all have access to that phone number. And so, yeah, from there, we schedule a Zoom call or just a chat on the phone, whatever they'd like to do.
Perfect. Thanks so much for taking the time to go through all of this stuff. I think the people watching, it's always really interesting to understand, like the side of things that, of certain aspects of real estate that most people don't know. So yeah, and especially really appreciated hearing about operating Airbnbs. I think that's something that definitely people are very interested in knowing more about. So
Yes, yes. And if they ever want to know more, they can contact me because I can talk for days and days and days about Detroit real estate, rentals, Airbnbs. It's fun for us. So,
good, perfect. Well, that's definitely apparent. You seem like you definitely um, I really respect people who enjoy property management and are good at it because I neither enjoyed it. I was good at it, but I hated it. So I can appreciate people who really, do a good job and and strive to make it better every day. So thank you.
yeah. I feel like some people are just born to be property managers. Like you can either do it or you can't.
And I think a lot of it has to do with systems too. People who really appreciate implementing systems,
Right.
all about systems. So,
Yes, very much so.
all right, Berkeley. Well, thank you so much. Have a good evening
Thank
and
you.
see you around.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Shannon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.